Hey, welcome back to Late Night Psychology. Get comfortable, settle in. Let the noise of the day fade into the background. There's no rush tonight, just you and the dark and something worth understanding. Tonight, we're going inside the mind of one of the most disturbing killers in recent history. Not a drifter, not a stranger in an alley, a nurse, someone who chose a profession dedicated to healing, someone trusted with the most vulnerable patients imaginable. Newborn babies, and she killed them. Her name is Lucy Letby. Between June 2015 and June 2016, she murdered 7 babies and attempted to murder 6 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital in England. She injected them with air, she injected them with insulin, she overfed them with milk, she poisoned them, babies who had been born premature, fighting for their lives. She ended those fights. The case horrified the world. How could someone who chose to care for babies become someone who killed them? How could she go home? After a shift, sleep, come back the next day, and do it again? How could she look the parents in the eyes, attend the funerals, and be Neonatal and feel nothing? Tonight, we're going to answer those questions, not with speculation, with psychology. First, the God complex, the intoxicating sense of power that comes from holding life and death in your hands. Second, the hidden narcissist, the need to be special, to matter, to be at the center of something important. Third, how she lived with it. The psychological mechanisms that allowed her to kill and still function as a normal person. This is dark material, but understanding it matters, because Lucy Letby isn't unique. There are others like her. And recognizing the pattern might save lives. Settle in, let your breathing slow, and let's begin. There's a type of killer that most people don't think about. We imagine murderers as violent men, strangers, criminals. We don't imagine nurses. But healthcare serial killers are a documented phenomenon, and they follow a pattern. Researcher Beatrice Yorker has studied this population extensively. She identified over 90 cases of healthcare serial killers worldwide. Nurses, doctors, caretakers, people who were supposed to heal, people who chose to destroy instead. What drives them? The research identifies several motivations: power, excitement, attention. But underneath all of them is something fundamental: control over life and death. Let me give you some context about this phenomenon. It's more common than you'd think. Beverly Allett, a British nurse in the 1990s, killed 4 children and harmed 9 others. Janine Jones, a Texas nurse, may have killed up to 60 babies. Charles Cullen, an American nurse, killed at least 40 patients over 16 years. Niels Hogel, a German nurse, killed at least 85 patients. These aren't isolated cases. This is a pattern, and the pattern has certain features. Healthcare serial killers usually work with vulnerable patients: the elderly, the critically ill, babies, patients who might die anyway, patients whose deaths won't automatically trigger investigation. They often work night shifts, less supervision, fewer witnesses, more opportunity. They're usually described by colleagues as competent but unremarkable, not brilliant, not terrible. The kind of person who blends in, who doesn't attract attention until the bodies start piling up. Think about what it means to be a nurse in a neonatal intensive care unit. These are the sickest babies, the most fragile, lives hanging by a thread. Every day you make decisions that matter: a medication, a setting on a machine, a moment of attention or inattention. The baby lives or dies. For most nurses, this responsibility is heavy, sobering. They feel the weight of it. They go home and worry. They check on their patients obsessively. They grieve when they lose one. The power is a burden, but for some people, the power is something else. It's intoxicating. Psychologists have a term for this. It's called the God complex. The feeling that you control fate, that you decide who lives and who dies, that you hold something that no one else in the room holds. Ultimate power. The God complex isn't an official diagnosis, but it describes something real, a grandiose sense of one's own importance and abilities, a belief that normal rules don't apply, a feeling of being above ordinary people, above their morality, their limitations, their weakness. In most contexts, the God complex is annoying but harmless: an arrogant boss, a self-important professor, someone who thinks too highly of themselves. But in healthcare, it can become dangerous because healthcare actually does give you power over life and death. The complex isn't entirely delusional. The power is real. In healthcare, this complex can manifest in troubling ways. A surgeon who believes he's never wrong, a doctor who dismisses patients' concerns because he knows better. But in its most extreme form, it becomes something darker, the realization that you could kill, and no one would know. Lucy Letby worked in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. She was responsible for premature babies, the most vulnerable patients in the entire hospital. Many of them were already fragile, already at risk of death. If something went wrong, it wouldn't necessarily seem unusual. Premature babies die. It happens. And Lucy Letby figured this out. She realized that in this environment, death was expected, that she could cause it and it might look natural, that she had power that no one was monitoring. Her methods were varied. She injected air into the bloodstream, causing embolisms. She injected insulin, causing hypoglycemia. She overfed babies with milk, causing them to aspirate. She caused trauma. Each method was designed to look like natural complications, the kinds of things that happen to premature babies. She was caught because she made mistakes. Some of the deaths couldn't be explained medically. Insulin doesn't appear in baby's blood unless someone injects it. Air embolisms leave traces. The pattern of deaths clustered around her shifts. But for a long time, no one connected the dots. The first documented killing was in June 2015. A baby died on her shift, then another, and Letby kept going. There's something the investigators noticed. The pattern of deaths and collapses was statistically impossible. When Letby was on shift, babies died. When she wasn't, they didn't. The correlation was almost perfect. But for over a year, no one acted on this information. Consultants raised concerns. They went to hospital management. They were told they were wrong, that they should stop making accusations, that they were damaging the reputation of the hospital. Senior doctors pushed back. The hospital was slow to investigate. This is a pattern in healthcare serial killer cases. The institution protects itself. It doesn't want to believe. An investigation would mean admitting something went wrong. It would mean lawsuits, bad publicity, accountability. So the concerns get dismissed. The consultants get told they're overreacting, and the killing continues. At Chester, the doctors who raised concerns were essentially silenced. One was accused of having a personal vendetta. Another was forced into mediation with Letby. The hospital prioritized peace over truth, and babies died, and Letby kept working, kept killing. This is part of what makes healthcare serial killers so dangerous. They hide in systems that don't want to believe. A nurse killing babies? Impossible. The idea is so horrifying that people reject it. They look for other explanations: equipment failure, infection, just bad luck, anything but the truth. And the killer knows this. She knows that no one wants to suspect her. She knows that her position, nurse, caregiver, healer, provides cover. She uses that cover. The God complex in Lucy Letby wasn't loud. She wasn't arrogant in obvious ways. She didn't brag about her power, but her actions reveal what she believed: that she could decide which babies lived and which died, that she was entitled to make that decision, that the normal rules, the ones that say you don't kill, didn't apply to her. There's another element to this: the excitement. Some healthcare serial killers describe a rush, a thrill that comes from the act itself. The power made real, the control exercised, watching something happen that you caused. We don't have Letby's confession. She maintains her innocence. But her behavior suggests she felt something, because she didn't just kill and move on. She inserted herself into the aftermath. She was present for the deaths. She watched. She stayed connected to the families. She kept souvenirs. This isn't the behavior of someone who kills reluctantly. This is the behavior of someone who gets something from it, something she wanted, something she kept coming back for. Take a breath. That was the first part. The God complex, the intoxicating power of controlling life and death. But power alone doesn't explain everything. There's another piece to Lucy Letby's psychology, a need that drove her, a hunger that the killing seemed to feed. Let's look at that now. When we think of narcissists, we usually imagine a certain type: loud, arrogant, boastful. The person who dominates every room, who talks about themselves constantly, who clearly believes they're better than everyone else. This is what psychologists call grandiose narcissism. It's obvious, easy to spot, but there's another type. It's called covert narcissism or vulnerable narcissism. And it's much harder to see. The covert narcissist doesn't brag. They might seem shy, self-effacing, even insecure. But underneath, the same needs are operating. The need to be special, the need to be recognized, the need to matter. Here's how to spot a covert narcissist. They often play the victim. They feel they've been treated unfairly, that the world doesn't recognize their value. There's a constant sense of grievance. They're hypersensitive to criticism. Even mild feedback feels like an attack. Because underneath, their self-esteem is fragile. They need external validation constantly. They're envious of others. They resent people who get attention or recognition they feel they deserve. And they fantasize about being special, about being recognized, about being the exception, about having something that makes them matter. The difference is in how they pursue these needs. The grandiose narcissist demands attention openly. The covert narcissist manipulates situations to get it quietly. They position themselves at the center of drama. They create circumstances where they become important. They may even present as victims to get sympathy and attention. Covert narcissists often feel underappreciated. They believe they deserve more recognition than they get. They resent people who seem to get attention they haven't earned. There's a simmering sense of entitlement mixed with grievance. I should be special. Why doesn't anyone see it? Lucy Letby showed multiple signs of covert narcissism. Let's look at the evidence. First, the online behavior. Letby repeatedly searched for herself on the internet. She Googled her own name. She looked up news articles about the deaths. She searched for the families of the babies she had killed. She checked to see if people were talking about her. This is narcissistic supply seeking. Narcissists need supply. Attention, recognition, emotional responses from others. By searching for news about the deaths, Letby was checking on the impact she had made. Were people talking about it? Was she at the center of something important? Second, the trophies. Letby kept mementos. She saved sympathy cards from the families of babies she had killed. She kept medical notes. She held on to handover sheets from the shifts when babies died. Trophy keeping is documented behavior in serial killers. They keep souvenirs from their crimes, not out of sentiment, out of a need to relive the experience, to remember the power they had, to feel it again. Think about what this means psychologically. Most people would want to forget, would destroy any evidence, would try to distance themselves from what they had done. Letby did the opposite. She kept reminders. She wanted to remember. The sympathy cards are particularly disturbing. These were cards from grieving parents thanking the nursing staff for their care, cards sent by people whose babies Letby had murdered, and she kept them as trophies. What does this tell us about her psychology? She wasn't trying to forget what she had done. She was trying to remember. She wanted to hold on to the feeling, the specialness of being at the center of these tragedies, the secret knowledge that she had caused them. Third, her insertion into grief. Letby didn't avoid the families after the deaths. She sought them out. She sent messages to bereaved parents. She attended funerals. She positioned herself as a compassionate caregiver who was also affected by the losses. This is a pattern seen in some killers. They insert themselves into the aftermath of their crimes. They attend vigils. They join search parties. They comfort the grieving. There's a term for this in criminal psychology. Post-offense insertion. The killer returns to the scene. They join the investigation. They attend the funeral. They want to see the impact of what they did. They want to be close to the chaos they created. For some, it's about control. They want to monitor what investigators know, to stay one step ahead. For others, it's about experience. They want to feel the full effect of their actions, the grief, the confusion, the drama. They created this, and they want to witness it. Why? Because it puts them at the center. It lets them experience the impact of what they did. It gives them more supply. For Letby, being present for the grief meant something. She wasn't hiding from what she had done. She was feeding off it. The family's pain, the hospital's confusion, the attention surrounding each death. She wanted to be close to all of it, because proximity made her special. There's one more piece of evidence, the relationship that seemed to obsess her. Letby appeared to be romantically fixated on a married doctor at the hospital. She kept messages from him, screenshots, evidence of their interactions. She seemed to believe their relationship was more significant than it was. This fits the covert narcissist pattern. An idealized relationship that makes her feel special, a focus on someone who represents status and importance, a possible fantasy about being chosen, being seen, being the exception. We don't know exactly what was in her mind, but the pattern is consistent, a deep need to be special, a need that wasn't being met through ordinary life, a need that she found a way to satisfy. Through killing, here's the dark logic. In ordinary life, Lucy Letby was nobody special, a nurse, competent but not exceptional, one of many. She probably felt that, felt invisible, felt unrecognized. The covert narcissist's constant grievance, I deserve more. But when she killed a baby, everything changed. Suddenly, she was at the center of a crisis. Doctors rushing in, alarms sounding, everyone focused on what had happened. And she knew something they didn't. She had caused it. She was the most important person in the room. She was special. The narcissistic supply from crisis was intense, more intense than anything ordinary life could provide. And she kept coming back for more. Take a breath, that was the second part. The hidden narcissist, the hunger to be special that the killings fed. But there's one more question we need to answer. How did she live with it? How did she kill babies and then go home, watch television, sleep, come back the next day? How did she function as a normal person while doing monstrous things? This is the question that haunts people about cases like this. How? How do you kill a baby and then eat dinner? How do you murder 7 infants and still go to work parties, post on social media, live a normal life? Doesn't the guilt destroy you? For most people it would. Most people couldn't do what Letby did. Not because they lacked the opportunity, because they lacked the psychological machinery. To kill and keep functioning, you need to silence the parts of the mind that would normally stop you. The conscience, the empathy, the basic human recognition that what you're doing is wrong. Psychologist Albert Bandura called this moral disengagement. It's a set of cognitive mechanisms that allow people to commit harmful acts without feeling like bad people. These mechanisms are universal. We all use them. When you exceed the speed limit, you tell yourself it's not really dangerous. When you gossip about someone, you tell yourself they deserve it. When you don't help someone in need, you tell yourself someone else will. This is normal moral disengagement. But some people use these mechanisms for much darker purposes. Let me explain how it works. First, there's moral justification. You tell yourself the harmful act is actually serving a higher purpose. Soldiers kill, but they're protecting their country. Executioners kill, but they're carrying out justice. The act is bad, but the reason is good. In Letby's case, we don't know if she used this mechanism. She never confessed, never explained. But some healthcare killers have claimed they were ending suffering, that the babies were going to die anyway, that they were providing mercy. This might have been part of her internal narrative, or it might not. Second, there's euphemistic labeling. You use language that sanitizes what you're doing. It's not murder, it's putting them out of their misery. It's not killing, it's like letting nature take its course. The words soften the reality. Third, there's diffusion of responsibility. You tell yourself you're not really responsible. The system is to blame. The hospital should have caught me. If it was so easy, is it really my fault? Fourth, and this one is important, there's dehumanization. You stop seeing the victim as fully human. They become objects, cases, things. This might have been easier for Letby than we want to admit. Premature babies don't look like regular babies. They're tiny. Some of them weigh less than a pound. They're covered in tubes and wires. They can't cry normally, can't make eye contact, can't interact. They're more like medical cases than people. In medical settings, there's a phenomenon called clinical detachment. Healthcare workers develop it to protect themselves. You can't emotionally connect with every patient. You'd burn out, break down, so you create distance. The patient becomes the case in bed 4, the preterm infant with respiratory distress. A problem to be managed, not a person to be loved. Most healthcare workers maintain some balance. They detach enough to function, but they don't lose sight of the humanity underneath. Letby might have detached completely. She might have stopped seeing the babies as people at all. They were just Things she could control, things she could use to feel powerful. Dehumanization is a powerful mechanism. It allows people to do terrible things to others while maintaining a positive self-image. I'm not a monster, those weren't really people. But moral disengagement isn't the whole story. There's another mechanism that might have been operating. Compartmentalization. We've talked about this concept before. The ability to keep different parts of your life or yourself in separate mental boxes so that they don't touch. Lucy Letby might have had two selves. One self was the killer, the one who injected air into tiny veins, who watched babies die, who felt the power. The other self was Lucy, the normal woman, the friend, the colleague, the one who went to parties, texted about ordinary things, lived an ordinary life. If she kept these selves separate, she wouldn't have to face what she was doing. Killer Lucy did the murders. Normal Lucy lived the life. And they didn't meet. There's research on how this works in the brain. The human mind is capable of holding contradictory beliefs, of being one person in one context and a completely different person in another. We all do this to some extent. Work you, home you, party you, different situations bring out different aspects of ourselves. But most of us have an integrated self underneath. We know we're the same person across contexts. We remember what we did, we feel continuous. True compartmentalization is different. The walls between the boxes are higher. What happens in one box doesn't leak into another. The person can genuinely not think about certain things unless they're in the right context. This might explain how Letby functioned. When she was at home, she was home Lucy. Normal, ordinary. When she was at work and killing, she was someone else. And the walls between them were solid. The evidence suggests something like this was happening. During the period she was killing, her text messages were banal. Complaints about work, social plans, ordinary life. No sign of internal torment. No hints of what she was doing. Either she was an extraordinary actress concealing constant guilt, or she genuinely wasn't feeling guilt, because the part of her that killed was walled off from the part of her that lived. There's one more thing we need to consider. What if she simply didn't feel what most people feel? Psychopathy exists on a spectrum. It's not an on-off switch. Some people have a few psychopathic traits, others have many. At the extreme end are people who genuinely lack empathy, remorse, guilt. They understand intellectually that others have feelings. They can recognize emotions in faces. They know the words. But they don't feel those feelings themselves. The suffering of others doesn't register the way it does for normal people. Psychopaths aren't necessarily violent. Many of them are successful, high-functioning, they're charming, good at manipulation, good at reading people. They just don't care about people. Not really. We can't diagnose Letby from the outside. She's never been formally assessed, or if she has, the results aren't public. But her behavior is consistent with psychopathic traits, the callousness, the lack of apparent remorse, the ability to function normally while killing, the insertion into grief, which for a psychopath isn't about feeling, it's about supply, the trophy keeping, the manipulation. If Letby has significant psychopathic traits, then the question, how did she live with it, has a simple answer. She didn't need to live with it. There was nothing to live with, no guilt to suppress, no conscience to silence, just the game, the power, the supply, the secret knowledge. That's all it was to her. And that might be the most disturbing possibility of all. Not that she's a normal person who became a monster, but that she was never like us to begin with. That the machinery most of us have, the empathy, the conscience, the basic human connection that makes harming others painful, was never installed. She looks human, she acts human. But something fundamental might be missing. Let's bring this together. Tonight, we went inside the mind of Lucy Letby. We saw the God complex, the intoxicating power that comes from controlling life and death. In the neonatal unit, she found something that most people never experience, the ability to decide who lives and who dies. And she used it. We saw the hidden narcissist, the covert need to be special, to matter, to be at the center of something important. The online searches, the trophy keeping, the insertion into grief. She wasn't hiding from what she did. She was feeding off it. And we saw how she lived with it. The moral disengagement, the compartmentalization, or perhaps the simple absence of conscience. that allowed her to kill and keep functioning. Lucy Letby is now serving a whole life sentence. She will never be released. She will die in prison. Throughout her trial, she showed almost no emotion. She sat in the dock, expressionless, while parents described their babies' deaths. She didn't break down, didn't look away, just watched. She has never confessed, never explained, never shown remorse, even when confronted with overwhelming evidence, even when given opportunities to apologize. Nothing. Maybe she can't. Maybe the part of the brain that would feel remorse simply isn't there. The families of her victims live with a different sentence. The parents who trusted her with their babies, who thanked her for her care, who received sympathy cards from the woman who murdered their children, their suffering is unimaginable. Some of these parents had already lost one twin, and then Letby killed the other. Some had babies who survived her attacks, but with permanent damage, brain injuries, disabilities, lives forever altered, and they had to listen to her defense, to hear her lawyers suggest the deaths were natural, to watch her deny everything, show nothing. The trial lasted 10 months. 10 months of reliving the worst moments of their lives, 10 months of fighting for justice. For their children, 10 months of looking at the woman who killed their babies. They got the verdict, guilty on all counts, but there's no real closure, not for something like this. What do we learn from a case like this? Maybe that evil doesn't always look like evil, that the person hurting you might be the one holding your hand. That trust can be weaponized, that some people walk among us who look human but lack something essential. And maybe we learn to pay attention to patterns that don't make sense, to death rates that seem too high, to that feeling that something is wrong even when we can't prove it. The doctors at Chester raised concerns. For months, those concerns were dismissed. 7 babies might have been saved. If this case teaches us anything, it's to listen to that instinct. When something feels wrong, it might be wrong. When the pattern doesn't make sense, there might be a reason. When the unthinkable seems to be happening, it might actually be happening. Lucy Letby counted on people not believing. On the idea that a nurse would never kill babies being too horrible to accept, she hid behind that disbelief. Now we know, and we can't unknow it. Thank you for staying with me tonight. Sleep well.